The restaurant kitchen was buzzing with energy as the evening rush approached. Chefs shouted orders across the room, knives clanging against metal and pans sizzling on the stoves. At the center of it all stood Chef Laurent, known for his sharp tongue and relentless pride. He took particular delight in testing anyone who dared to enter his kitchen unprepared. Today his attention settled on Clara. She was quiet and unassuming, with soft hands and a gentle demeanor. Her uniform was pristine, but she moved slowly and cautiously, as if afraid to disturb the flow of the kitchen. Laurent smirked, noticing her hesitation, and called her over with a flick of his wrist. Clara approached silently, her eyes lowered but her mind calm. Laurent handed her a complex recipe with multiple layers of sauces, garnishes, and intricate presentation. He said mockingly that he doubted anyone could complete it under the pressure of the dinner service. The sous chefs nearby snickered and whispered amongst themselves. They had seen Laurent humiliate many before and expected Clara to fail spectacularly. Clara nodded softly and set to work. Her hands moved carefully, but with purpose, chopping herbs, blending sauces, and arranging ingredients with precision. The kitchen was chaotic, but she seemed to flow through it as if dancing with the ingredients. Laurent paced behind her, watching every move, his brow furrowed in annoyance and disbelief. Minutes passed, and the tension in the kitchen grew. Orders were flying in, and other chefs were shouting over each other, trying to keep up. Yet Clara remained focused. Her sauces balanced perfectly, her cuts precise, and her timing impeccable. Finally, she plated the dish with meticulous care. It looked like a work of art, each element perfectly in place. The sous chefs fell silent. Even Laurent froze, his fork hovering over a tasting spoon as he stared at her creation. He tasted it reluctantly, and then again to be sure. His face changed from skepticism to shock as the complex flavors danced perfectly on his tongue. He stepped back and looked at Clara, his pride warring with the undeniable truth. The quiet woman before him had not just completed the dish. She had elevated it to a level that surpassed even his expectations. For the first time in the kitchen, he found himself speechless. Clara stepped back from the counter, her hands folded calmly in front of her. She did not gloat or smile triumphantly, she simply waited as the kitchen absorbed the impact of her work. The sous chefs exchanged amazed glances, whispering quietly among themselves. Even the line cooks, who had once rolled their eyes at her presence, now watched with a newfound respect. Laurent cleared his throat finally, his voice tight but controlled. He asked her quietly where she had learned to cook with such finesse. Clara looked up for the first time, meeting his eyes. "I trained in Europe," she said softly, and then added that she had worked under several Michelin star chefs before returning home. The kitchen went silent again. The other chefs had expected an apology or a timid excuse, but instead they were faced with a quiet confidence that radiated from Clara. Laurent turned slowly to the line, watching each chef's expression shift as the truth settled in. For the first time, he realized that his arrogance had blinded him to the talent standing right in front of him. Orders continued to flow in, but the atmosphere had changed. The other chefs worked more carefully, now inspired by Clara's example. Even Laurent found himself checking her stations, quietly learning from her methods despite himself. Clara moved gracefully through the chaos, her hands steady and her mind clear. By the end of the service, the restaurant had received praise from every table. Guests commented on the artistry of the dishes and the balance of flavors that seemed effortless. Laurent stood at the past tasting plates, still trying to reconcile his pride with the undeniable skill he had witnessed. Clara quietly cleaned her station and gathered her things, her calm presence a sharp contrast to the adrenaline that had filled the kitchen. For the first time, Laurent nodded to her without a word. It was a silent acknowledgement of her mastery and the respect she had earned in a single evening. The kitchen buzzed with energy, but now it carried admiration instead of tension. Clara had not just completed a dish, she had transformed the way everyone in the room saw her. The next day, the kitchen felt different. Chefs moved with a renewed energy and a quiet eagerness to improve. Clara arrived early, as usual, her movements calm and deliberate. She prepared her mise en place with the same precision, but now there were subtle glances of admiration from those around her. Laurent watched from across the kitchen, his arms crossed. He still carried the remnants of pride and stubbornness, but he could not ignore the way Clara's skill elevated the entire team. He found himself offering advice sparingly and letting her take the lead on complex dishes. It was a shift in authority he had not anticipated, but one he could not resist acknowledging. That evening, a group of food critics arrived unexpectedly. The kitchen tensed as orders were called and dishes plated with exact timing. Clara moved through the stations, coordinating flavors and presentation. Her calm confidence guided everyone around her, and the chaos of the dinner rush seemed almost harmonious. When the critics tasted the dishes, their eyes widened. Notes were scribbled rapidly, and whispered compliments passed from one to another. By the end of the evening, they requested a meeting with the chef in charge. Laurent, still reeling from the previous night, called Clara forward to present the dishes. She explained each component with clarity and subtlety. Her passion for flavor and balance shone through every word. The critics listened intently, taking notes and nodding appreciatively. Laurent watched silently as Clara spoke, realizing she had become the true face of excellence in his kitchen. By the time the critics left, glowing with praise, the kitchen staff erupted into quiet celebration. Clara smiled softly, acknowledging their hard work without seeking the spotlight. Laurent shook his head in amazement, understanding that her talent had not only challenged him but had transformed the restaurant entirely. For Clara, it was more than recognition. It was proof that skill and humility could command respect in a world often ruled by arrogance. And as she cleaned her station that night, the kitchen felt lighter, brighter, and alive with possibilities she had always known she could achieve. The following weeks brought a steady stream of diners eager to taste the dishes that had earned the critics' praise. Clara continued to work quietly yet confidently, her hands moving with practiced grace. Each plate she touched carried the precision and artistry of a chef who had trained at the highest level. The kitchen staff followed her lead, inspired by her focus and the effortless way she elevated every dish. Laurent found himself watching her more closely than ever. He noticed the subtle techniques she used, the careful timing of sauces, and the flawless execution of garnishes. His initial prideful disdain had faded, replaced by a begrudging respect he could no longer hide. Sometimes he even asked her for advice, and though Clara never boasted, she shared her knowledge freely, guiding him and the team. One busy evening, a renowned food blogger arrived unexpectedly. The restaurant was packed, every table ordered to perfection. Clara moved between the stations with quiet authority, tasting sauces, adjusting plating, and directing the flow of service. The blogger watched silently, eyes widening as dishes left the pass, each one more exquisite than the last. At the end of the night, the blogger requested a word with the chef responsible. Laurent hesitated, glancing at Clara. He gestured for her to step forward, and she did, calm and composed as ever. She described the inspiration behind each dish, the thought put into balancing flavors and textures. The blogger listened intently, jotting notes rapidly, clearly captivated by her insight and skill. After the blogger left, the kitchen erupted in quiet celebration. Even Laurent allowed a small smile, acknowledging Clara's brilliance without a word. Clara returned to her station, cleaning and organizing, her expression serene. The staff looked at her with admiration and gratitude. For Clara, it was not just about recognition or praise, but the quiet satisfaction of mastering her craft and inspiring those around her. Night after night, the restaurant flourished under her influence. And though she remained humble and unassuming, everyone in the kitchen and dining room knew that Clara was no ordinary chef. She was a master of her art, a quiet force whose skills spoke louder than any words could. And Laurent, once arrogant and dismissive, had learned that true talent could not be hidden or ignored. Months passed and Clara's reputation grew beyond the walls of the restaurant. Food critics, bloggers, and culinary enthusiasts began requesting interviews and private tastings. Yet she continued to work quietly in the kitchen, never seeking the spotlight. Her focus remained on the flavors, the balance of each dish, and the satisfaction of every diner. Laurent watched her adapt seamlessly to the increasing demands. He realized that his own pride had almost blinded him to her talent. Now he found himself learning from her methods, incorporating her techniques into his own work. The kitchen operated with a newfound harmony, each chef inspired to push their skills further. One evening, a famous Michelin inspector arrived unexpectedly. The staff tensed as orders flowed in rapidly. Clara moved through the kitchen as she always did, tasting, adjusting, and guiding with effortless grace. Her dishes were plated with artistry and precision, every detail considered. The inspector sampled each course silently, scribbling notes and occasionally nodding. Clara presented the final dish calmly, explaining the concept and inspiration behind it. The inspector's eyes widened as they tasted the flavors, each element perfectly balanced. They wrote extensively in their notebook, clearly impressed by the depth and skill evident in her work. After the inspector left, Laurent gathered the team. He finally spoke, his voice steady but carrying awe. "Clara, your work tonight has elevated this kitchen beyond anything I could have imagined." The staff erupted into quiet applause, looking at Clara with admiration and gratitude. Clara smiled softly, returning to her station. She did not seek accolades, but she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing her skill had been recognized at the highest level. The kitchen continued to hum with energy and focus, a testament to her influence and mastery. And in the quiet moments between orders, Clara allowed herself to imagine what new heights she could reach. The following weeks brought even more challenges as the restaurant received invitations to participate in prestigious culinary events. Clara approached each opportunity with her usual calm precision, planning menus and refining recipes late into the night. The kitchen staff followed her lead, motivated by the quiet confidence she exuded. Laurent, once arrogant and dismissive, now found himself relying on her judgment more than his own at times. One afternoon, a reporter from a renowned food magazine arrived unannounced. They asked to interview the head chef about the restaurant's recent acclaim. Laurent started to respond, but the reporter quickly insisted on meeting the chef responsible for the signature dishes. He hesitated, then nodded toward Clara, who was quietly arranging garnishes at the pass. Clara took a deep breath and spoke with clarity and passion. She explained the inspiration behind each dish, the thoughtfulness in flavor pairing, and the meticulous attention to detail. The reporter listened intently, occasionally leaning in to jot down notes. By the time the interview ended, they were visibly impressed, praising her as a rising star in the culinary world. That evening, as the dinner service began, the energy in the kitchen was electric. Clara moved gracefully between stations, tasting sauces, guiding plating, and ensuring timing was flawless. Laurent observed her from across the kitchen, a quiet respect in his eyes. He realized that the success of the restaurant no longer rested solely on his shoulders. Clara had become its heart, quietly steering the team with skill and grace. When the final orders left the kitchen and the dining room emptied, the staff gathered briefly. They offered quiet congratulations, each member acknowledging the mastery and composure Clara had brought to the hectic night. She smiled softly, her pride contained but unmistakable. For Clara, it was never about recognition or fame. It was about the love of her craft, the joy of excellence, and the knowledge that her quiet determination had changed everything. As weeks turned into months, Clara's influence in the kitchen deepened. The staff began to anticipate her movements, adopting her methods and approach to each dish. Even the most seasoned chefs found themselves learning from her quiet expertise. Laurent, once the unchallenged authority in the kitchen, now deferred to her judgment in moments of high pressure. One evening, an international culinary delegation arrived for a private tasting. The restaurant was at capacity, and every dish had to be flawless. Clara moved through the chaos with effortless control, tasting, adjusting, and guiding her team. Her calm focus inspired everyone around her, and the kitchen operated with a rhythm that felt almost choreographed. The delegation sampled each course in silence, eyes widening at the complexity and balance of flavors. When they reached the final dessert, Clara stepped forward to explain the concept and technique behind it. Her words were precise and thoughtful, reflecting not only her skill but her deep understanding of culinary artistry. The delegation whispered among themselves, clearly impressed by both the dish and the chef behind it. After they left, Laurent finally approached Clara with a rare expression of humility. He admitted that he had underestimated her and that her talent had elevated the restaurant beyond anything he could have imagined. The staff, who had once watched in awe, now worked alongside her with respect and admiration. Clara continued to move through the kitchen with quiet grace, her focus always on the dishes, the team, and the dining experience. Late that night, as she cleaned her station and organized her tools, Clara allowed herself a small smile. She thought of how far she had come from the quiet woman the arrogant chef had once mocked. Her skill, patience, and dedication had transformed not only her own path, but the entire kitchen around her. And though she remained humble and composed, everyone who had witnessed her mastery knew one thing for certain. Clara was no ordinary chef. She was a force of talent and precision whose quiet brilliance could not be ignored. The reputation of the restaurant continued to grow as word of Clara's talent spread. Regular diners returned eagerly, and new guests arrived hoping to experience the artistry of her dishes. Clara maintained her quiet presence, never seeking the spotlight but allowing her work to speak for itself. Her influence shaped the kitchen, elevating every chef around her and setting a standard that had never existed before. Laurent observed this transformation with a mixture of awe and reflection. He realized that the success of the restaurant no longer relied solely on his reputation or authority. Clara's vision, skill, and composure had become the driving force behind the excellence everyone now celebrated. He began to support her quietly, offering guidance when needed but leaving her to lead on the most complex and creative dishes. One evening, a renowned culinary award committee visited for a private tasting. The kitchen was tense, but Clara's calmness steadied everyone. She moved through the stations with precise timing, tasting and adjusting, guiding the plating, and inspiring confidence. By the time the dishes reached the table, every element was flawless, reflecting the culmination of her skill and artistry. The committee members took notes and sampled each dish with thoughtful appreciation. When they reached the final course, Clara explained the inspiration and method behind it with quiet authority. Her knowledge, passion, and meticulous approach left them visibly impressed. After they departed, the committee praised the entire team but specifically highlighted Clara as the star of the evening. The staff celebrated quietly, acknowledging the recognition of the chef who had transformed the kitchen. Laurent nodded toward Clara, a rare smile of genuine respect on his face. She returned to her station, cleaning and organizing with her usual calm composure. Though she did not seek accolades, Clara felt a deep satisfaction. Her quiet determination, mastery, and dedication had not only proven her talent, but had changed the entire world of the kitchen around her. As the weeks passed, Clara continued to refine her craft. She experimented with new flavor combinations and techniques late into the night when the kitchen was quiet. Her team watched closely, learning not only from her skill but from her patience and attention to detail. Even Laurent, once skeptical and arrogant, found himself quietly taking notes and asking questions. The restaurant began receiving invitations to culinary festivals and televised cooking events. Clara approached each opportunity with calm determination, ensuring that every dish represented her vision perfectly. Her leadership transformed the kitchen into a place of creativity and respect. Chefs who had once been competitive with one another now collaborated seamlessly under her guidance. One afternoon, a journalist from a major culinary magazine visited for an in-depth feature. They asked about the head chef's philosophy and inspirations. Laurent gestured toward Clara, acknowledging her as the creative force behind the restaurant's success. Clara explained her approach to balancing flavors, textures, and presentation, her words measured yet passionate. The journalist listened intently, clearly impressed by the depth of her knowledge and the clarity of her vision. That evening, Dinner service proceeded smoothly under Clara's calm direction. Orders flew in, and dishes went out perfectly timed and flawlessly executed. The staff moved with quiet confidence, inspired by her example. Laurent watched from the pass, noting how the kitchen had become a reflection of her precision and artistry. As the last guests left and the lights dimmed, Clara stood at her station, quietly cleaning and organizing. She allowed herself a small smile, reflecting on the journey from being underestimated and mocked to commanding respect. Her quiet confidence, skill, and dedication had not only earned recognition but had transformed everyone around her. And as she stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a sense of purpose and possibility that stretched far beyond the kitchen walls. From that night onward, Clara's reputation continued to soar. She was recognized not just for her technical skill but for the quiet strength and vision she brought to every dish. The kitchen thrived under her guidance, each chef inspired to reach higher, work smarter, and create with passion. Laurent, once arrogant and dismissive, now acknowledged her as the heart of the restaurant, his respect genuine and unwavering. Clara never sought the spotlight, yet it followed her naturally. Awards, invitations, and accolades came, but she remained focused on her craft, letting her work speak louder than any words. Her dishes became legendary, her name whispered with admiration in culinary circles far beyond the city. And through it all, Clara stayed true to herself, calm, humble, and brilliant. The quiet woman who had once been mocked had risen to command kitchens, inspire chefs, and transform the art of cooking. She had proven that true talent, patience, and dedication could not only withstand arrogance, but could flourish beyond it. And in every perfectly plated dish, in every satisfied guest, and in every inspired chef beside her, Clara's quiet genius shone unmistakably bright.